Hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Thursday, July the 10th, 2025, the 191st day of the year, already into triple digits of the 7th month of the year. Tomorrow is 7/11, which means free Slurpees. But today is about an entirely different drink. It's National Pina Colada Day.
If you like pina coladas.
Escape is the real name of the Pina Colada song, which came out in 1979, back when Thursday nights used to mean ladies' night, right? And a lot of pina coladas were being served up. Today is also National Kitten Day, encouraging adoption or volunteering at a pet shelter. While you were likely sleeping, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is halfway around the world meeting with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, in Malaysia, where the annual Association of Southeast Nations Summit is happening. At the same time, Russia launched a massive air attack on the Ukrainian capital city of Kyiv after the U.S. agreed earlier in the week to resume sending some weapons to Ukraine.
I echoed what the president has said, both disappointment and frustration at the lack of progress in peace talks or in a path forward. Strategy is to continue to engage all the parties that are involved in finding an outcome to this conflict. We will engage anytime that we have an opportunity to do so, like we did today.
Ukrainian President Zelensky is in Italy for what's being called a Ukraine Recovery Conference.
Thank you all for your attention to Ukraine, to the needs of our people, first of all, and to our shared responsibility to do everything necessary to protect life.
After meeting with the heads of 5 African countries yesterday and holding a cabinet meeting at the White House Tuesday, President Trump has no scheduled events on the calendar today outside of his daily intelligence briefing, which has already happened. He is threatening 50% tariffs on Brazil now over the treatment and investigation of its former president, Jair Bolsonaro, calling it a witch hunt. I'm going to guess that we will hear from the president at some time concerning the massive Russian strike on Ukraine as well. I have Newsmax segments on President Biden's former doctor, Kevin O'Connor, exercising his Fifth Amendment right yesterday, refusing to answer questions from the House committee investigating the cover-up of Joe Biden's declining mental health. There's a lot of reaction and commentary on the investigation into former CIA Director Brennan and former FBI Director Comey, as well as the continued uprising over this week's announcement concerning the Epstein case. And since that is what everyone everywhere is talking about, even people who care less about politics are so lit up on this Epstein thing now, I'll start with Rob Schmitt and his guest, Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA.
It does seem strange that we've heard so much about Epstein and his connections. He knew so many powerful people. He had this weird island and this creepy stuff, and all of a sudden there's no black book.
I have several thoughts. First, from I think the president's perspective, you got to think a couple days ago he signed the One Big Beautiful Bill. You have this tragedy in Texas, and for him, he's like, can we at least get a little bit more focus and emphasis on this incredible domestic policy agenda?
Yeah.
So that's my first kind of initial comment, knowing the president as I do. But I want to take a step back and just remind people that President Donald Trump, when you win a popular vote majority, you build a multi-ethnic, multi-generational, multi-viewpoint coalition. And moments like this are somewhat inevitable when you have so many different components to your coalition and your base. Now, for some people, they really don't care much about the Jeffrey Epstein thing. It's like, whatever, not a big deal. However, I could tell you for the 3 types of category, the people that got behind President Trump, younger voters, more kind of libertarian-leaning voters, and those that spend a lot of time online or on the internet, they tend to be transparency advocates.
Yes.
The Epstein thing has been a very high priority. Here's where I think things started to miss the mark a little bit, is that there were, by certain people that work for President Trump, high expectations made. The administration said, hey, there's going to be a big reveal, that we have a truckload of stuff, that it's going to be jaw-dropping, that it's going to be incredible. So when expectations and reality are misaligned, that's where people start to get disappointed. And so what happens next, so I think, is going to be really important. It's going to differentiate whether or not this is just a moment or a lasting multi-generational movement. And I could tell you from the younger voters that I represent, and then we have this huge student action summit coming up this weekend, they look at the Jeffrey Epstein situation not necessarily about the terrible, evil, and sadistic behavior from this creep, as President Trump rightly said it, but they look at it as a bigger question of how our government operates. And Rob, I think that is why people are so interested in this and remain interested, because it's a greater question of how the inner workings of, quote unquote, the deep state are functioning and whether or not the people are able to have a voice in those matters.
Well, I mean, we've known President Trump as a politician. We've known Donald Trump as a politician for almost 10 years now, right? And it's, you know, we've the one thing that's been true this whole time is that he hasn't been beholden to anything. I mean, that's what's just so, you know, appealing about him, is that he is what he is, and he's a flawed person, but nobody controls him. Nobody owns him. No special interest can control him. So in my mind, the first thing that I run to when I hear, I mean, and you're getting this from everybody in MAGA world. I mean, X is exploding with people very angry at the administration, very angry at the president. It's just like he's gone this far without being controlled by anything. To me, it seems almost surreal to believe that this man is now all of a sudden beholden to whatever it is that's trying to suppress a potential client list for Jeffrey Epstein. It just it doesn't seem like he would do that.
And I have not engaged in that rhetoric, as you know, Rob. And however, I receive a lot of it, and some people they're a little bit upset and they're a little bit frustrated, especially on the younger side. And so let me just add a little bit more detail, though. I think MAGA is more unified as ever, and you see that in the polls. But Sagar and Genti said something recently that I think is important, that we must differentiate between MAGA and the right. And the right involves some people that voted for MAGA back in November, but they're part of that multi-generational, multi-viewpoint coalition. You know what it's like to build an election, and this is where President Donald Trump deserves such credit. He spoke at the Libertarian Convention. He brought together border hawks, and he brought together people that care about the economy, and older voters and younger voters. So you have this kind of consensus from the MAHA people. I mean, it's an incredible coalition that was built here. But I do want to be very clear that the transparency advocates that are younger in nature, they have been very confused. And it's left me a little profoundly confused by just some of the administration officials that told us that there was going to be this big reveal, Rob, and then we didn't quite get that, and then we're told that information doesn't exist. And so, look, the president, he's working his tail off. He's solving the Congo-Rwanda war. He's got Iran. He's got Israel, one big, beautiful bill. And I think that some clarification down the road might be very well suited.
Charlie Kirk on Rob Schmitt Tonight. Clarification down the road, as I've been saying all week, needs to be now. The clarification needs to be now, or at least have FBI Director Patel or Attorney General Bondi release a statement that there will be a news conference with some clarification and explanation on Monday or next Wednesday or whatever. But we need something. Charlie mentioned transparency in the deep state, right? That's it right there. It's not only the younger voters, too. That's the issue for most everyone. The transparency and the deep state. It's not about Epstein. Epstein's dead. This is about the cover-up, right? Because of President Trump, the things that he has said and proven over the years, the way he was treated, everyone knows that it's a cover-up. Finnerty spoke with the great Bill O'Reilly, who totally agrees with me.
Bill, it's great to have you back.
Thanks for having me in, Rob.
What do you think happened here? Because a month ago, it felt like we were going to get a lot more information. It felt like we were going to get the truth at some point from this administration. Now, it feels like a cover-up. What do you think happened?
Yeah, it's not a good look, that's for sure. On St. Patrick's Day, I was in the White House, and I talked to President Trump about this. And we were also talked about the Kennedy assassination files and Martin Luther King. And his take was similar to mine, that you get as much out as possible. But unlike a guy like Jake Tapper, who's really not reporting the truth, there's a reason you have to be cautious here. Because any name attached to Epstein, even if it were somebody who had a drink with him sometime, if your name's attached to his name, you're through. And your enemies will use that to destroy your entire life. So the federal government has to be very careful about context, because the media, it doesn't care about context. And on both sides, right and left, they're looking for people to destroy with an association to Epstein. But this is not hard to disarm that. And that's the conundrum that I can't figure out. So all Pam Bondi has to do is hold a press conference and say, this is what we know. But she doesn't have to put names out. And she can explain to the press, just as I'd explain to you, why you can't destroy people. Now, if somebody is under active criminal investigation, that's different. Then you can put their name out. But if they're just mentioned in some kind of a report, you can't. So that's where we are. Now, why Donald Trump doesn't tell Bondi, hey, get out there and answer the questions generally, and if you can't answer a question, explain why, I don't know. And one more thing. The person who should be sitting right beside Bondi is Merrick Garland, the Attorney General under Joe Biden.
Right.
He had that stuff for 4 years. 4 years. Where's he?
Do you buy any of this notion that Donald Trump was on the list?
No, why would I do that? There's no evidence that says that.
And Merrick Garland would have released it, right?
Yeah. Why would any fair-minded person even think about something like that with no backup?
Bill, I hate to be, tinfoil hatty right now, but they made this happen. All right, conspiracy theories. That we need new ones because the old ones all came true, the old saying. Do you buy any of this notion that really powerful people, and I'm talking about some of the most powerful people on this planet in the last 50 years, played a role in burying this story, burying the truth when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein and the people, whoever they are, that he was allegedly trafficking in these young girls too? Do you think they got to somebody at DOJ or the FBI or maybe the president himself and made this story go away?
Yeah, I don't waste my time on stuff like that, Rob, because I don't have any information indicating that. I do know that in Florida, the authorities did not prosecute Epstein correctly. And there, that's a fact. Now, there hasn't been any charges of bribery or anything like that. But Epstein got a very soft touch in Florida when this whole first thing broke. And so that is a fact. But again, you got a guy like Tapper on CNN who basically distorts pretty much everything he says.
Correct.
And he goes, well, the autopsy wasn't released. That's false. The autopsy was released, and it said clearly that the man committed suicide. That's what it said. So, you listen to the reports, they stoke this kind of conspiracy stuff because it's good for ratings. I'm sure there'll be a book that does crazy conspiracy stuff that'll make some money. But for me, as a real hardcore old school journalist, I don't consider stuff unless there is evidence.
Yeah.
It's just not right to do.
No, I know. But Bill, you know as well as I do that when this stuff festers and when we get this Sunday night news drop, instead of, to your point, a press conference where Pam Bondi standing beside Kash Patel and maybe Dan Bongino and others address what they know in an honest, upfront way, when you get a Sunday night, 4th of July weekend, 7 p.m. news dump to a left-leaning website, it just kind of stinks. And then when you get the Brennan Comey news yesterday, to me, it feels like a shell game. It feels like, hey, look here, not there. Follow that story now, not the Epstein story.
Bingo. I didn't use the term shell game, but is that not exactly what I said yesterday? And I know for a fact that Finnerty listens to the podcast. It's actually funny that Rob used the term shell game because Comey, I don't know if he did that on purpose, but Comey was already being investigated after the shells on the beach incident that said 86-47, right? And yes, this is about the Russian hoax. But keep in mind, just because there is an investigation doesn't mean there will be charges. All right, moving on to Greg Kelly reports and more on the investigation.
But I will tell you, I think they're very dishonest people. I think they're crooked as hell. And maybe they have to pay a price for that. I believe they are truly bad people and dishonest people. So whatever happens, happens.
Totally nails it again. President Trump on those two very deceitful people who really have it coming to them, right? The wheels of justice. It's taken a long time. Comey and Brennan. We talked a lot about Comey last night. How about Brennan? Let's dig down. First of all, these guys implicate themselves in the silly books they wrote. They wrote books And they gave it all up. They thought Trump was never coming back. They could write this, get away with it. And now, oh boy, they wish they never wrote these books. Their criminality, or at least their lack of ethics, on full display. It's amazing what they put in print and what they said in their audiobooks. We have the audiobooks. Those are great. Brennan, director of the CIA. Scary guy. He's the kind of guy who gives kids bad dreams, right? I mean, just look at him. CIA director, 2013 and 2017 under Obama, second term, and he'd been hanging around the government for basically 35 years or so, a real deep stater. And in his own book, he literally can't stand the sight of Donald Trump. He goes there with a professional responsibility to brief the president-elect on the awesome responsibilities that he's about to face, to tell him about the world. All he wants to do is talk about Russia interference in the election, which he helped cook up, the whole damn hoax. And he just tells everybody, flat out, he hates the guy.
I stared at Trump, shook my head in disgusted disagreement, and bit my tongue nearly hard enough to draw blood.
Whoa. He just met the guy. That was in Trump Tower. President Trump was asking basic questions about intelligence gathering. President Trump never had a chance with these people. And you really don't want a chance with these people. We want these people out of government. Anyway, yes, there was tension between President Trump and the intelligence community. Somebody had to call him out for missing 9/11, no weapons of mass destruction. And they were leaking and trying to sabotage his campaign. So it was a difficult situation. President Trump tried to make it right. On his first full day of being president, he goes to Langley, Virginia. This is January 21st, 2017, and says, "I love you" to the intelligence guys over and over again. Check it out.
I want to say that there is nobody that feels stronger about the intelligence community and the CIA than Donald Trump. There is nobody. The wall behind me is very, very special. We really appreciate what you've done in terms of showing us something very special. And your whole group, these are really special, amazing people. Very, very few people could do the job you people do. And I want to just let you know, I am so behind you. And I know maybe sometimes you haven't gotten the backing that you've wanted. And you're going to get so much backing. Maybe you're going to say, please don't give us so much backing. Mr. President, please, we don't need that much backing. But you're going to have that. I believe that this group is going to be one of the most important groups in this country toward making us safe, toward making us winners again, toward ending all of the problems. We have so many problems. I can only say that I am with you 1,000%. I just wanted to really say that I love you. I respect you. There's nobody I respect more. You're going to do a fantastic job, and we're going to start winning again, and you're going to be leading the charge. So thank you all very much. Thank you, beautiful. Thank you all very much. Have a good time. I'll be back. I'll be back. Thank
you. Wow. Now, if you worked there, how would you feel? If you were a normal person and you worked there, you'd feel great. The President of the United States. Okay, we may have had some differences, but he's totally with us. John Brennan, who hates President Trump, watched this on TV, and he coordinates with all of his swamp friends. And somehow it's a swamp, right? So everything good is bad and everything bad is good. Everything's backwards. This is what he had to say about what you just saw.
My former colleagues, fellow retirees, as well as serving CIA officers, began texting me, with many simply writing, WTF? Other texts were not nearly as kind. As Trump was still talking, I told Kathy that I couldn't take it anymore. I felt physically nauseated watching and listening to him. I'm going to the gym to blow off some steam, I said as I hurried out the front door before Trump finished speaking.
John Brennan, and that's not after the fact, that is while he is the director of the CIA. He clearly hates Donald Trump, and clearly it would not have been difficult for Hillary Clinton, President Obama, who he was working for first, and whomever else to get him on board with the Russian collusion story. Greg Kelly also spoke with Congressman James Comer, chair of the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, about President Biden's former doctor refusing to testify yesterday.
We're joined by the chairman, Representative James Comer, Republican of Kentucky. Welcome, sir. What was it like today with that guy in the room?
Well, it's pretty shocking. Here we have the White House physician for the past 4 years. Everyone in America now knows that there was a probable cover-up of Joe Biden's mental decline. Here's an opportunity for the doctor to come clean and defend all the reports that he issued saying Joe Biden was in perfect health. And instead of answering the questions, he invoked the Fifth Amendment time after time. And it was very clear. His lawyers finally said after about 14 times where he pled the Fifth Amendment that you can ask questions all day long. He's not going to answer any questions. He's going to continue to invoke his Fifth Amendment right. So it's pretty disappointing, but our investigation moves forward, and we're going to get to the bottom of who is authorizing the use of the auto pen, and we'll determine whether or not Joe Biden knew what was actually signed using his name.
Let's listen to him actually do that, where he's put specific question. This is C02.
Dr. O'Connor, were you ever told to lie about the president's health?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer. I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
It seems like, the Fifth Amendment, that's about self-incrimination. He's asked if somebody told you to lie. That would be incriminating somebody else. He probably could have or should have, right?
Yeah, that's not a difficult question. And that's a question he knew he was going to be asked. And he still declined to answer it. Most people that plead the Fifth have some type of criminal liability. And that's why they invoke the Fifth Amendment. So with this being, as many are saying, including President Trump, the biggest scandal in the history of the presidency, the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental decline, here's his physician who had the opportunity to come clean and defend his medical reputation, and defend all the reports he issued saying Joe Biden was in perfect physical health. He couldn't even answer a question as to whether or not he was told to lie about the president's health. He was asked another question. Do you think that Joe Biden was mentally able to fulfill the duties of the presidency? And he invoked the Fifth Amendment on that. I mean, it's astonishing to see, and it adds more fuel to the fire that there was a cover-up. And this is, as President Trump says, the biggest political scandal in the history of the White House.
Chairman Comer, not to be confused with Comey, on Greg Kelly Reports. Comer went on to say there is more and more evidence of a cover-up every day, and with more and more Biden staffers writing books, they will continue to bring people in for questioning. Will anyone end up being charged with anything? Time will tell. My guess would be no. Let's wrap it up with a segment from last night's Right Squad on USAID.
One of the federal agencies the president has been looking to eliminate, USAID, has been officially closed down. But the Daily Caller News Foundation has obtained previously unreported documents that show the agency shipped 11,000 viral samples to a lab in Wuhan, China, over the course of a 10-year program, even though it had no formal agreement with the lab in place, and with no apparent plan for ensuring the samples were not misdirected to bioweapons and remained accessible to the U.S. government. I did some reporting a couple months back that there was a civil war within the State Department. There was a camp that wanted to keep USAID and a camp that wanted to get rid of USAID. Jason, tell me, which camp would you be in? If you want to get rid of USAID or not?
I think USAID is important for a lot of reasons. Number one, we just talked about Africa and we talk about soft power. I think it's good for the United States to be at the forefront of that and handing out aid to people who need it, handing out medicine, whether it's HIV medicine, keeping, a lot of these places healthy. I think it is good for our image as the leader of the world to have that soft power. I also think that, just as a God-fearing man, that, you help other people. And I think USAID was one of the outlets, major outlets for us to do that.
More bad news for USAID funneling things presumably to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the birthplace of the Wuhan Red Death that allegedly killed 7 million people. But at the same time, there's a story out today that the people at USAID that remain and the former USAID people are now engaged in an open conspiracy to undermine the Trump administration and destroy President Trump's agenda. And that's what USAID is up to today.
Chris Plante and The Right Squad, 10 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax. Check it out tonight. In Texas, the death toll from this week's flash flooding has now surpassed 120 people. Well, you see all these numbers, you hear all these numbers get thrown around. We're talking about people, children, brothers, sisters, parents, grandparents. I keep saying it, but it is incomprehensible. And 170 people still unaccounted for. The Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans of the NFL were both criticized earlier this week for donating $500,000 each to the recovery efforts. This is what was quickly pointed out on social media and in some print. Organizations that are worth billions and pay players millions of dollars a month donated a mere $500,000 each. But I do want to recognize Dallas Cowboys superstar receiver CeeDee Lamb. There's always someone who rises to the occasion. He grew up in neighboring Louisiana. And not only did he donate $3 million of his own money, he's also in Kerrville, Texas, helping with recovery efforts and talking to children. Kudos to CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. On Wall Street, stocks opened just slightly lower this morning, but it is a good day for you if you own shares of Kellogg. The stock took a massive jump this morning on news of a potential $3 billion buyout. AI giant NVIDIA became the first publicly traded company in the world to top the $4 trillion mark, beating Microsoft and Apple, the first companies that were worth $1 trillion, to the $4 trillion mark. NVIDIA shares up about 35 cents. And toy company Mattel, symbol MAT, creator of the Barbie doll, announced yesterday a diabetic Barbie will be coming out, complete with a glucose monitor and insulin pump. I guess if you have a child that is diabetic, Santa will be bringing that this year. And Bitcoin is currently at 111,000 after hitting a new all-time high just above 112,000 yesterday. Be sure to keep up with all of today's news and any breaking developments throughout the course of the day on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com, where it all started. Be sure you have the Newsmax app on your phone as well, so you can stay up to date anywhere, anytime. The news starts each and every morning with Wake Up America, followed by National Report, Newsline at noon with Bianca De La Garza, American Agenda, Chris Salcedo, Carl Higbee, Greta Van Susteren, Rob Schmitt, Finnerty, Greg Kelly, and much, much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you for listening. As always, maybe have a pina colada today. Pay attention and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.